Chapter 61. More annoying was that just as he was about to rush to stop Yan's outrageous move, he heard the other party say, "Well, I have reported this matter, so are you going to directly tell me who spread the rumor to you, or will you explain the situation in detail when the college investigates?" For a moment, he even had the thought of strangling Yan to death. Just as he was hesitating to put this idea into action, he saw Yan hesitate for a moment and then say, "Forget it. Let's wait until the college investigates, otherwise I'll have to look for them one by one, which is quite troublesome." For some reason, the boy was deflated when he heard these words. It was at that moment that he was finally convinced of something. Yan felt justified in what he had just done. He might even have felt that it was the only way to solve this problem. As he had just said, that was what he should have done. But instead of looking relieved, the boy looked even more depressed. If he knew that Yan was such a rigid and stubborn person, he would not have talked about him behind his back. He just talked about him behind his back and was reported to the college. It was a disaster for him. With the official launch of the investigation in the next few days, more people had similar thoughts. They were even more shocked and confused than the boy. They had discussed some unnecessary gossip with their friends when they were bored. How could they suddenly be notified of an investigation by the college? They not only received a notice of investigation from the college but also received clear criticism and education. The person who criticized and educated them one by one was one of the leaders of the college. His exact words were, "As students in an institution of higher learning, it is very wrong to slander students of the same school, major behind their back. Don't think that you have just made a trivial mistake. When your actions cause negative trouble for others, you should feel guilty for your words and deeds and bear corresponding responsibilities. You are all adults now. If you can't even be responsible for your words and deeds, I suggest you immediately turn on the instant error correction function of your light brain. It will point out the mistakes in your daily words and deeds at any time and help you correct these mistakes that you have been neglecting." Most of them became aware of their mistakes after hearing the words of admonishment and receiving the credit deduction punishment from the college. However, some people still feel that they were just making a few casual remarks which didn't cause any harm and thus, should not be so seriously criticized and punished. However, whether they realized their mistakes or not, at least after this lesson, they would remember not to casually slander other students behind their backs. Of course, apologies to Yan, the student they had slandered, were also inevitable. Therefore, in the past few days, Yan had to receive several apologies from students almost every day. As long as the apologies were sincere enough, Yan would graciously choose to forgive them. Of course, there were a few students who, even after being asked to apologize, still had a very bad attitude. For example, one of the students said this when apologizing, "I have been forced to come over and apologize. Are you satisfied now?" Yan replied seriously, "No, I'm very dissatisfied with your apology because I can't hear it as an apology at all. You sound more like you're accusing me." On saying that, Yan thought for a moment and opened his light brain. He searched for the correct meaning of the word, apology, on the virtual network and read the content to the other party. "So you see, my understanding is not wrong. Your words and attitude just now were indeed not an apology." The other party never expected that Yan would refuse to accept his apology, and made such a move. For a moment, his face turned green. Are you out of your mind?" The other party paused for a moment before turning aggressive. "Isn't it just a little bit of cleverness that made others have to come and apologize to you? I think they're right, you're a scheming villain." Yan raised his eyebrows unhappily. "This student. This is the second time you've slandered me, and this time it's to my face." With that, Yan skillfully made his second report, and the student standing in front of him quickly received a second penalty of deducted credits and a more serious critique and education. And less than a day later, he appeared in front of Yan for the second time and made a second positive apology. This time, his attitude is quite different from the last time. As soon as he saw Yan, he immediately owed himself. His attitude is especially sincere. "Yan, I didn't know how to respect my classmates before, and I did wrong things which hurt your reputation. Now I have fully realized my mistakes, and I will correct them seriously. I hope you can forgive me." No matter what he thought, There was nothing to be picky about his attitude when apologizing this time. In addition, he had already received the punishment he deserved. And Yen nodded and said, "I feel happy that you can realize your mistake. I accept your apology now." This matter naturally attracted the attention of many people, since there were always people suddenly appearing in front of Yen in the past few days and apologizing as soon as they opened their mouths. In addition, many of them were not even students of the pharmacy major. With a little inquiry, they had a general understanding of the whole story. The first reaction most of the students had after learning about the incident was, "Damn, how can there be such an operation?" They also did not expect that Yen would directly report the matter to the college for investigation when he heard that someone was slandering him behind his back. After all, things like gossiping behind one's back happen too often in the academy. Even when the person concerned occasionally heard other students' comments, they could only hold their tongue. Some who had tempers may have argued with them a bit, but it still didn't solve the problem and even caused the other party to spread the rumor more aggressively. This kind of problem happened more and more often, and people gradually got used to it. Everyone was naturally surprised that someone suddenly reported the situation to the college instead of following the usual procedure. But when you think about it, there was nothing wrong with this kind of action. For one thing, it is wrong to deliberately slander one's fellow student behind their back. Even if such a mistake is small, it should be punished accordingly. On the other hand, although it was too simple and brutal, it was an effective solution to the problem. They couldn't help but admire Yen. The ability to come up with the best solution to a problem like that on the spot and put it into practice without fear was something that no ordinary person could do. After thinking about this, everyone had a lot of good feelings towards Yen, and at the same time, they also took this approach to heart. If they encountered a similar situation next time, they might really be able to apply what they had learned and solve the problem in the quickest and most effective way. Yen was unaware of his classmates' thoughts, and if he had known, he might have felt very confused himself. He was just following the rules and regulations of the college. Wasn't that what he was supposed to do? Yen had done what he was supposed to do, and he simply put the matter aside. But some people were getting worried. The college had launched a series of investigations into the matter, and more people were discovered to have spoken out against their classmates in this incident, which meant that things were getting closer and closer to the truth. There was always a source to gossip, and with this source, the rumor would spread and morph into what people think is the truth. Since the rumor about Yen spread so quickly in the college, and even many students from other majors knew about it, one can imagine that the source of the rumor must be a person with a lot of influence, or at least a lot of influence in a certain group. And that person was Zhao Xinxin. When she first spread the rumor, Zhao Xinxin had already planned that she would only start the rumor and not say anything about the topic afterwards. That way, even if Yen found out anything, the matter would never come back to her. The idea was a good one, and it did even come close to being correct in similar incidents that had happened before. After all, the more rumors spread, and the longer they last, the harder it is to find out the root cause. The real originator can instead hide in the depths and reap the benefits. But all of this was based on the premise that Yen, when faced with the rumor, would handle it in the same manner as similar incidents before. He would either swallow his anger and do nothing, suffering from the rumors, or he would argue his case, which could further intensify the spread of the rumors and even create new ones. Zhao Xinxin had investigated Yen before, and in her opinion, a small person like Yen, who had no background, would only have these two possible attitudes to deal with the things he encounters. However, the truth was the exact opposite of what she had expected. Yen neither held back his anger nor argued his case. He directly reported the matter to the academy. Chapter 62. What Zhao Xinxin found even more difficult to accept and understand was that the academy actually launched an official investigation over such an insignificant matter. Zhao Xinxin initially thought that the academy was investigating this matter because someone had taken the initiative to report it, and it would be inappropriate to ignore it completely. So she thought that even if the academy launched an investigation, it would at most be for show, a statement of attitude, and an explanation to the whistleblower. However, the college's investigation gradually intensified and more students were involved. It finally dawned on Zhao Xinxin that the college was not just putting on an act. They were simply using this incident to conduct a thorough investigation so as to make an example of them. If this matter was concerning someone else, Zhao Xinxin might not have cared at all. She might even have made a few mocks. However, this matter concerned her, so the situation was completely different. Zhao Xinxin had been feeling uneasy in the past few days, and as more and more students were investigated and the investigation results were getting closer to the root cause, this uneasiness was becoming more and more intense. To start the rumor, Zhao Xinxin only told one person as a precaution. This person was Zhu Ming, her admirer and a classmate from her elementary school days. She chose Zhu Ming because, aside from the fact that he had always been devoted to her and flattered her in every way, he was a well-known loudmouth in her class. Basically, as long as he knew about something, it would be spread around the class and even the whole college. In fact, Zhao Xinxin had made use of this before, asking Zhu Ming to help her spread rumors several times, and she was satisfied with the results each time. She settled on this plan with little hesitation when she decided to make a move against Zhen Yan, and she used Zhu Ming to implement her plan. It is true that she chose the right target based on the speed at which the rumors spread. The question now was whether his big mouth would show itself in a different way when he is questioned and becomes the source of the bane that betrays her. Zhao Xinxin wasn't really that worried at first. After all, he liked her so much that she guessed that he wouldn't betray her even if all his credits were deducted. But along with the investigation process, more and more students did not hesitate to give up their friends, and there were even cases of random climbing. So Zhao Xinxin began to worry. No matter how much this person likes her, how can he still care about that when it comes to things related to his own interests? Zhao Xinxin was a selfish person, and she naturally thought that everyone was like that. The more she thought about it, the more worried she became, and the more she felt that as long as Zhu Ming was investigated, the other party would betray her without hesitation. At that moment, a classmate who had a good relationship with Zhao Xinxin approached her and said with a gossipy face, "Xinxin, have you heard? The person who started this rumor-mongering incident is actually Zhu Ming. Although I had heard him gossip about An Yan before, I never thought he would be the one who started the rumor." Zhao Xinxin was already worried about this matter. Her heart thumped and her expression was unnatural as she said, "Is that so?" Her classmate nodded, pretending to be puzzled. "Yeah, how could Zhu Ming do such a thing? It's not like he had anything to do with An Yan before, so why would he deliberately spread rumors to slander his classmate?" Zhao Xinxin's face turned even uglier. "I'm not too sure. Do you think there could be a mistake?" The classmate stole a glance at Zhao Xinxin and frowned. Maybe Zhu Ming wasn't the one spreading the rumor at all. Maybe he just heard someone else say that and followed it up. Zhao Xinxin was already a little breathless, and she said with an unhappy scowl, "I don't want to discuss this matter anymore." Her classmate nodded and raised her eyebrows. "Then we won't discuss it. Anyway, Zhu Ming will soon be under investigation, and then we will know what the heart of the matter is." Zhao Xinxin's face instantly tensed up. "You're saying that Zhu Ming will be under investigation soon?" The classmate nodded. "Yes. I heard it." Zhao Xinxin's face changed a few times, but in the end, she didn't say anything and left in a hurry. She walked to a secluded place and immediately dialed Zhu Ming's communication. He answered after only one ring. Zhu Ming was now in a terrible mental state, having just undergone the academy's investigation, but he still adjusted his state after seeing Zhao Xinxin's call. He opened his voice softly, "Xinxin, how are you?" But before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Zhao Xinxin's harsh voice, "Where are you now?" Zhu Ming heard the tension in Zhao Xinxin's voice and subconsciously asked, "Xinxin, have you encountered something unhappy? No matter what you encounter, you can." This time, however, he was mercilessly interrupted again. He was rewarded with an even more impatient question. "I asked where you are now? Do you not understand my words?" Zhao Xinxin couldn't focus on anything else right now. She was preoccupied with the fact that she had to see Zhu Ming before he was investigated and stop him from betraying her. Zhu Ming was slightly stunned by Zhao Xinxin's questioning, and his already bad mood immediately dropped down. But he still tried his best to control his tone and replied, "I'm on my way to the dormitory right now." Zhao Xinxin breathed a sigh of relief. He was on his way to the dormitory, so he should not have been questioned yet. She then said, Don't go back to the dormitory yet. I need to see you for something. Let's meet at the usual place. Head there right now. Okay. Zhu Ming would never refuse Zhao Xinxin's request, and this time was no exception. The old place that Zhao Xinxin mentioned was a cafe outside the college that was very remote and usually had very few customers. Zhao Xinxin chose to meet in such a place because she did not want others to see her and Zhu Ming spending time together. Zhao Xinxin walked into the cafe 10 minutes later, and Zhu Ming was already waiting at the corner. Zhu Ming hurriedly got up and was ready to greet her, but Zhao Xinxin had already walked over quickly and went straight to the point. I guess you haven't undergone the academy's investigation yet, right? Zhu Ming was slightly stunned by the question. His gaze flickered for a few moments before he shook his head with a reluctant smile. No, there's no way the academy will investigate me. Don't worry. Zhu Ming said this was because he didn't want to make Zhao Xinxin worry. Even if the academy investigated him, he would never betray Xinxin. Instead of making her worry and feel bad along with him, it would be better for him to take everything on himself. However, to Zhao Xinxin's ears, this was not the case at all. She thought that Zhu Ming was really planning to betray her, so he was deliberately hiding it so that he would not be exposed on the spot. Zhao Xinxin became very angry in her heart, but now was the most critical time, and she could not vent her temper directly like she did in the past. She could only slow down and speak as calmly as possible. Zhu Ming, I know that this incident may have caused some bad effects on you, but I really did not mean to say those things to you in the first place, and I never expected that you would spread rumors. Zhu Ming froze for a moment, seemingly unable to understand what Zhao Xinxin meant. Zhao Xinxin was a little guilty when she first opened her mouth, but she felt that she was right the more she spoke. She had only complained to Zhu Ming at that time. Things wouldn't have come to this if Zhu Ming had been unable to control his mouth and had not deliberately spread those words out. So, in her analysis, Zhu Ming could only be blamed for not keeping his mouth shut. The more Zhao Xinxin thought about it, the more she felt that this was the case, and her tone of voice became increasingly justified. So why did you deliberately spread those words at that time? Did you deliberately want to harm me? At this point, Zhu Ming was completely frozen. He now understood what Zhao Xinxin was saying, but was completely unable to understand and accept it. Half an hour ago, he had undergone questioning, and he didn't Zhao Xinxin at all during the process. He even planned to keep it to himself in order not to worry about her, but he never expected that his patience and persistence would end up with such a malicious questioning. At this time, Zhu Ming was even a little confused. In his memory, Zhao Xinxin had always been noble and reserved. Although she had a little temper, those little tempers were cute at best. It was at this moment that Zhu Ming realized how wrong he had been as he looked at Zhao Xinxin's accusatory gaze and words. The person standing in front of him was not noble and reserved, she was a perfect synonym for selfishness and malice. He remembered that a few days ago, Zhao Xinxin was deliberately slandering An Yen in front of him, but he subconsciously and subjectively excused her even though he was well aware of Zhao Xinxin's small-mindedness, just like every other time before. When An Yen reported the matter to the academy, he never thought of involving Zhao Xinxin, even though he was worried about it. He had done everything willingly, and he could not blame anyone for it. Moreover, Xinxin had always cared about her reputation, so how could he let her get affected by this matter? He was even thinking that Xinxin's attitude towards him would change when this matter was over. Even if it would still be impossible for her to accept him, she would at least interact with him a bit more, right? It was a pity that just when his idea had come into being, he was severely douched in cold water by reality. This cold water not only quenched his unrealistic fantasies but also extinguished all his love and consideration for Zhao Xinxin. It was at this moment that he realized how stupid he had been, and that perhaps in Zhao Xinxin's eyes, he was not even a clown. He surprisingly did not feel anger and despair, but only a strong pang of irony, an irony of himself. He had chased after Zhao Xinxin for so long with his eyes closed, not looking or listening, thinking that this would shield him from all harm, only to realize in the end that it was all just an empty dream on his part. Zhu Ming heard himself open up with unparalleled calm. Xinxin, is that really what you think? Zhao Xinxin, unaware of Zhu Ming's inner drama, lifted her chin slightly to say, justifiably, didn't you? I was just in a bad mood and made a few casual remarks. If you hadn't been unable to control your own mouth, how would things have spread like this? Zhu Ming felt like laughing. So when you said with conviction that An Yen had cheated on the entrance exam and had used unorthodox means to befriend the Cheng brothers, in your opinion, those were just a few casual remarks? Zhao Qinxin's gaze couldn't help but avert. I was just furious at the time I said that. Who knew that you would believe it? Anyway, no matter how this matter came about, the main responsibility lies with you. Even if I said something bad about An Yen, I only told you. You were the one who spread such rumors and ended up making a scene that everyone from other majors knew about it. So, if you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself for loving to spread gossip. Zhu Ming let out a bitter laugh. Is it really because I love to spread gossip? Can't you see by now that I did all this for you? You needn't be shirking your responsibilities here. Of course Zhao Xinxin couldn't accept this, but she snapped. Even if it's true that I told you such things this time, what about before? You used to spread rumors everywhere, everyone knows that. Zhu Ming lowered his head slightly, bitterness in his voice. How would you have remembered my existence if I hadn't done that? Didn't you think of me only when you want me to spread rumors for you? It was true that Zhu Ming was a big mouth in everyone's eyes and liked to spread rumors about everything, but he initially wasn't like that. It was only when he occasionally heard Zhao Xinxin complaining about another classmate that he had an epiphany-like thought about a possibility. If he could help Zhao Xinxin, would she be able to see him? With that, he slowly became a loudmouth in everyone's eyes, and it was only after that he had the chance to get close to Zhao Xinxin. At that time, he felt proud of his cleverness. It was only now that he realized how stupid and ridiculous his actions really were. He had hurt others and fooled himself even more. Chapter 63. It was time for all of this to end. With this in mind, Zhu Ming's eyes slowly quieted down as he looked at Zhao Xinxin. They were no longer as hot and crazy as before. But Zhao Xinxin was enraged at being exposed. Don't spit on my face. I've never done anything like that. It is just your own imagination, so why blame it on me? Having been enlightened and having lost his heart, some of those words sounded difficult to accept. Zhu Ming's expression was calm as he gazed at Zhao Xinxin, as if he was looking at a stranger. I don't think you know yet, do you? Just an hour ago, I was questioned by the academy, and I didn't mention a word about you during the whole process. Zhao Xinxin's expression changed noticeably. She looked stunned, as if she was doubting the truth of that sentence. Zhu Ming watched her expression and continued word by word. I told them that I was the one who set this up from the beginning to the end. I said that I was jealous of An Yan's results in the entrance examination and his closeness to the two Cheng brothers, so I deliberately spread such rumors to slander him. Zhao Qinxin's expression changed with Zhu Ming's words, finally settling on annoyance. She did not feel that there was anything wrong with her attitude or words just now, but after hearing these words, there was inevitably a trace of weakness and guilt in her heart. But this weakness and guilt were soon replaced by more anger. Why did Zhu Ming not say anything in the first place but had to wait until now to say these words? Was he deliberately trying to embarrass her? Besides, who knew if Zhu Ming said that on purpose as an excuse to avoid his responsibilities? She looked away and said in a blunt tone, "This matter was originally your responsibility and has nothing to do with me. Whether you have been investigated or not, it is none of my business." Even though he had seen Zhao Xinxin's true face, Zhu Ming was still shocked by her shamelessness. He laughed out loud. "You are right. It is true that this has nothing to do with you, but what is going to happen next is everything to do with you because I have changed my mind. I will report the truth of this matter to the college and accept its punishment. I hope you will do the same." He had hurt so many people in the name of love, and indeed deserved to be punished as he deserved. Zhao Qinxin's eyes instantly went wide as she looked at Zhu Ming incredulously. "How can you do this? Who are you to do this to me?" Zhu Ming's reply was very short. "This is my freedom." Zhao Xinxin was so angry that her face turned red. It was until this moment that she realized her earlier actions might have been damaging. If she hadn't come to Zhu Ming today and said those words to him, perhaps Zhu Ming would indeed not have betrayed her. Even in the future, he would still have been willing to do anything for her. But she did such a thing out of fear, instead of making Zhu Ming change his attitude and inviting considerable trouble for herself. But someone like Zhao Xinxin, who had a strong character and was used to shirking responsibility, would never admit her mistake even though she had already made some judgments in her heart. So her first reaction was nothing but anger. Zhu Ming, you are simply too despicable. Zhu Ming no longer wanted to say anything more to Zhao Xinxin and directly stood up. I think this should be our last meeting, so goodbye, Miss Zhao. Wait. Zhao Xinxin saw that Zhu Ming was getting up to leave, and she hurriedly called out to him, but she couldn't soften her tone. She could only say in an aggressive manner, Zhu Ming, even if you tell the college about this, there is no evidence to prove that what you say is true. You should know this very well. She had always been secretive every time she met Zhu Ming. She would specifically check whether Zhu Ming's light brain had the recording or video function turned on when they met, in order to prevent leaving evidence. Zhu Ming replied, I am well aware of this, but I will still report the situation truthfully. You will only end up harming yourself if you continue being stubborn. Zhao Qinxin's tone took on an obvious threat. You know what my family is like, and if you insist on offending me, I'm afraid there will be no place for you in the entire pharmaceutical industry in the future. These words made Zhu Ming's face ugly. He was well aware of the Zhao family's power in the pharmacy industry, so her threat might really be more than just verbal. Seeing this, Zhao Xinxin said with a bit of smugness, as long as you don't betray me, I certainly won't do anything to you. It's a good deal for you, isn't it? Zhu Ming gritted his teeth, but in the end did not change his mind. I'm sorry, I don't intend to accept your threats. With that, he strode out of the cafe. Zhao Qinxin was so angry that she cursed several times behind him but never called Zhu Ming back. In the end, she could only stomp her foot and follow him out. Although his attitude was firm when he left, Zhu Ming was at a loss for a moment. He had liked Zhao Xinxin for so long, but he never thought that it would end up like this. Just before this confusion spread, the beep of his light brain interrupted his thoughts. He looked down and saw that it was an email from a stranger. Strangely enough, the email had no title or body, only a video attachment. Zhu Ming frowned and clicked on the video. His eyes widened in vain the moment he saw the video, and he reflexively shut down his light brain, looking as if he had been in some great shock. It took a while before his expression gradually regained its composure. Then he quickened his pace and headed back to the college. After leaving the cafe, Zhao Xinxin did not remain idle. She realized that she was now in trouble and hastily contacted her father for help. Zhao Chengxuan was both surprised and disappointed with his daughter's call. He thought that although his daughter was somewhat arrogant, she could never do such a stupid thing. He even wondered for a moment if he had misheard, until his daughter asked him in a panic over the call what she should do about the matter. He took a breath and said in a calm voice, find Zhu Ming and apologize to him immediately. Offer him compensation, and if he still doesn't change his mind, then let him think that you are also attracted to him and that there is a possibility of development between you. Zhao Chengxuan had made it so clear, but Zhao Xinxin still couldn't get the point. She said, with some annoyance, Dad, there's no way I can like that kind of person. Did I say that you should like him? Zhao Chengxuan looked at his daughter coldly. The disappointment in his tone could no longer be concealed. There are countless ways to give him such an illusion that do not include the point of your liking him. Zhao Xinxin noticed her father's cold gaze. Although it was still difficult to accept such a thing, she stopped showing any obvious anger or difficulty in accepting it, much less trying to contradict her father's words. I know. Zhao Chengxuan was afraid that his daughter would continue to be stupid and explained again and again, Xinxin, you'd better figure out what's most important to you now, your pride or your reputation, understand? Zhao Xinxin gritted her teeth and nodded, I understand. Zhao Xinxin struggled for a while after hanging up before she made up her mind and called Zhu Ming. To her surprise, she had been blacklisted and couldn't even get through to him. Zhao Xinxin was furious. After fuming for a while, she decided to find another way to contact Zhu Ming. She can't directly go to Zhu Ming. So, she finally found a friend and decided to borrow her light brain to contact him. But just when she wanted to explain her intention, she saw her friend speak with a troubled expression. You'd better not contact Zhu Ming, okay? Zhao Xinxin's tone was as bad as her mood. I don't need you to worry about my affairs, you just need to lend me your light brain. The friend hesitated for a moment, but still couldn't resist speaking the truth. "You'd better take a look at this video first." With that, she opened her light brain and clicked on the video in a certain post on the school's website. The first thing that caught Zhao Xinxin's eyes when the video started was a familiar layout. Before she could figure out where it was, an incredibly familiar voice suddenly came out. "I suppose you've not been questioned by the college yet, right?" Zhao Xinxin's head instantly exploded, and her whole body completely lost the ability to think. The friend hurriedly closed the video, thought about it, and finally left without saying a word. At the same time, a certain post that had just popped up on First College's campus website had quickly turned into a firestorm due to the large number of replies. 1 liter, damn. The content of this video is so explosive it's mind-boggling. 5 liters, so the ultimate protagonist of the recent rumor-mongering incident that has spread throughout the college is this Zhao Xinxin? Who the hell is she? 13 liters, upstairs, you don't know Zhao Xinxin? She is a member of the Zhao family, a pharmacy family, and may be the head of the Zhao family in the future. 19 liters, as far as I know, the Zhao family has a good reputation in the pharmacy industry, so how come this Zhao Xinxin is so maverick? What a surprise. 26 liters, more than a maverick. This is simply vicious to the extreme, okay. She first deliberately used someone who likes her to spread rumors. When things fell apart, she kicked the whole pot to the other side. The series of actions were really skillful. 34 liters, don't be so direct upstairs. That's the Zhao family's potential successor. You will offend the Zhao family if you say that, and then there's no telling what they'll do to you. 41 liters, I'm in the same major as Zhao Xinxin. I thought she was pretty good before, and she must have had good qualifications to be able to make good potions at such a young age, but I didn't expect her to have such a persona behind her. What a surprise. 55 liters, I do feel sorry for Zhao Xinxin. When she was designing all this, she didn't think in any way that the person she was slandering would report the matter directly to the college. 66 liters, speaking of which, I really admire that student too much. His wave of operation is simply too good. Chapter 64. Because of Anyan's wave of miraculous actions, he and Zhao Xinxin became popular on the campus website, but the reasons for their popularity were a little different. One was popular because of his superb and magical operation, while the other was because her ugly face was revealed in this operation. While the internet is buzzing about the incident, the two freshmen, who had just enrolled in the college, were standing face to face. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have casually doubted you before. I also accidentally told others what I thought, which had a bad effect on you. I hope you can forgive me." Zhao Xinxin stood in front of Anyan with a red face. Although she was trying her best to hide her emotions, her expression was still very close to distorted. To make her humbly apologize to Anyan was simply an insult to her character. If it wasn't for that ungrateful bastard Zhu Ming, who had secretly filmed the video and posted it on the school's intranet, how could she have ended up in such a situation now? Anyan's mind had been focused on his studies ever since he started school. He had never been on the school intranet at all, not to mention knowing about the various posts that had been going around recently. However, this did not affect his ability to tell from Zhao Xinxin's words that the rumors about him were spread by this person. Anyan looked at Zhao Xinxin carefully and asked, "So you're the source of those rumors, right?" Zhao Xinxin originally intended to play down the point and be vague. After all, it was very difficult to get her to explicitly admit her mistakes. But it seemed that this Anyan was not going to let her off the hook. In order not to make her situation even more embarrassing, Zhao Xinxin could only grit her teeth and nod. "So can you forgive me?" She had been severely scolded by her father because of the video exposure, so even if she had a lot of anger in her heart, she could only hold it inside. Anyan instead asked, "Can you tell me why you did this?" He was actually a little curious. He should have never met Zhao Xinxin before entering the first college, much less offended the other party. But from the first time they met, Zhao Xinxin had shown a very obvious rejection and dislike towards him. She had even deliberately created a rumor about him that was spread all over the academy. So what was this all about? Anyan hadn't been able to figure out the answer to this question. Since he couldn't think of an answer, it would be better to just ask her. This person should know the right answer. but it sounded like a slap to Zhao Xinxin and made her nearly unable to hold her anger and burst out directly, "I already know that I was wrong now. Isn't that enough?" And Yen calmly returned, "If a person doesn't even have the courage to face up to their mistakes, I think it's hard for them to truly realize their mistakes." Zhao Xinxin's face was turning purple. "And Yen, don't go too far." She had already tolerated it to this extent. Why did this person still refuse to let her go? And Yen blinked his eyes and thought carefully for a while, but he didn't feel that his words had gone too far. So, he had to ask, "Please first tell me where I have gone too far. If it is indeed my fault, I will change it." Zhao Qinxin was so angry at these words. This guy must be doing it on purpose. She would sooner or later faint from anger if she stayed with him any longer. There were many students around, and it was already embarrassing enough for her to apologize to An Yen in front of so many people. But now An Yen has even deliberately insulted her. It was hateful. Zhao Qinxin felt that the eyes around her were like sharp blades that pierced directly into her heart, making her feel so embarrassed and angry that she couldn't bear it any longer. She shouted, "I've already apologized to you. Will you accept it or not? Before I consider whether to accept your apology or not, can you really not tell me the answers to these two questions? Not just two, I now have a third question. Didn't you come over to apologize to me? But why do you look so menacing? You instead look like you want to fight me?" And Yen now had one more thing he couldn't understand. His words were clearly fine, so why did this person's expression look so frightening? There was no telling who around him chuckled twice, and immediately got it under control again. But even so, Zhao Xinxin was stimulated. She gave the surroundings a fierce glare. "What are you looking at? All of you, get out." If she had known that there would be so many people gathered here, she would not have listened to her father and chosen to apologize to An Yen in public. Although most of the students in the pharmacy major knew Zhao Xinxin's identity and background, and were therefore scornful of her, not everyone was. At this moment, someone sneered and said, "Zhao Xinxin, you were the one who wanted to apologize to An Yen in the classroom. We are already being generous by not complaining that you are disturbing our studies. Who are you to tell us to get out of our classroom?" Zhao Qinxin didn't dare lose her temper with An Yen because of her father's repeated instructions, but that didn't mean she could allow others to humiliate her. At that moment, Zhao Xinxin turned her head in anger to look at the classmate who had spoken, and said in a sharp voice, "That's because I am the next head of the Zhao family. So, I have the right to tell you to get out." Without waiting for that classmate to refute, An Yen, who was standing beside Zhao Xinxin, whispered suspiciously, "Why would the next head of the Zhao family have such a right?" A number of people around them laughed out loud, and that student who had spoken up also laughed. "I'm also curious to know why the next head of the Zhao family would have such rights. Does the entire first college belong to the Zhao family?" Zhao Qinxin had just been infuriated and had spoken without thinking at all. It was only then that she realized that her words were very wrong. But she was already suffocating enough and was really unwilling to slap herself in the face in front of so many people. In the end, she actually just ran away. Halfway through her run, she still heard An Yan's voice coming from behind her, saying, "Classmate Zhao Xinxin, I haven't had the chance to tell you that I didn't accept your apology." This was followed by a chorus of mocking laughter. Zhao Qinxin was so angry that she almost couldn't resist turning back to those people to fight for her life. It was only when she returned to her flat that she slowly recovered from her anger and humiliation and gradually felt some regret and fear. Her father would be very angry if he found out what had just happened. But she couldn't be blamed for the incident. If An Yen and those bastards hadn't bullied her so much, she wouldn't have been so angry that she completely lost her mind. But what should she do now? With things going the way they are now, she would never dare go back to her father. But apart from that, what else could she do? Zhao Qinxin thought for a long time but still couldn't find a single person who could help her. Usually, these people liked to come to her side and flatter her, but when it came to critical moments, none of them were of any use. If only someone could stand by her side and accompany her at this time. As soon as this thought appeared, a figure flashed in Zhao Xinxin's mind. Her eyes lit up as she hurriedly opened her light brain and punched in a number. After waiting for a few seconds, the call was connected, and a low magnetic voice came out from inside. "Hello." Zhao Qinxin's heart jumped. and she subconsciously grabbed the clothes on her chest. Her voice sounded infinitely aggrieved and expectant as she spoke. "Brother Cheng, where are you now, Brother Cheng?" There was a moment of silence at the other end. Then someone replied, "I'm in my flat." "What's the matter with Miss Zhao?" The situation was so urgent that Zhao Xinxin couldn't care less and pleaded with a sobbing voice, "Brother Cheng, can you help me? You're the only one who can help me now." "Oh? How do you want me to help you?" Cheng Yi's voice sounded slightly playful and with a distinct indifference. But Zhao Xinxin didn't hear it at all. She just pleaded, "Brother Cheng, aren't you very close to that Yan? He must be very obedient to you. Can you ask him to take the initiative to forgive me?" As long as Yan could take the initiative to forgive her and put this matter behind him, then whatever had happened before would quickly dissipate and her father would not reprimand her for this matter. Cheng Yi was once again silent for a moment before saying regretfully, "I'm afraid I can't help you with this favor, but I can help you with another." Zhao Qinxin was undoubtedly very disappointed at the first sentence, but her heart was once again lit up with hope at the second. "Then how will Brother Cheng help me?" Over there, Cheng Yi seemed to be operating something, and his speech became much slower. "You'll know in a minute." "What exactly are you doing, Brother Cheng?" Zhao Qinxin's heart was both expectant and curious. However, Cheng Yi did not answer her again, so Zhao Qinxin waited with anticipation. A minute was not long anyway, and it would soon pass. The two remained silent for a while before Cheng Yi finally spoke. "You can go and take a look now." "Look at what?" Zhao Xinxin even softened her voice. Cheng Yi said back, "You should check out the post related to you on the school website." "I'll go and read it right now." Zhao Qinxin opened the discussion interface of the school intranet with anticipation and excitement. She scanned through the posts on the front page, and her eyes soon locked on a title. #shock. The high-quality potion given to the second youngest of the Cheng family by the daughter of a pharmaceutical family was actually not made by her at all. #shock! Instead of finding what she wanted to see, she caught a glimpse of this post and was greeted with more shock and embarrassment. "What the hell is going on here?" Zhao Xinxin's first reaction was to open her mouth to defend herself. "Brother Cheng, did you see that post on the school intranet that slandered me? What that post says is not true. You must not believe it." Cheng Yi's response was extremely calm, even cold. "I saw that post, and that is the post I wanted you to see." Zhao Xinxin was dumbfounded for a moment, then she correctly deciphered the meaning of this sentence and said in a shocked voice, "You posted it?" For a moment, Zhao Xinxin couldn't even be bothered to continue disguising her true nature in front of Cheng Yi. Cheng Yi replied indifferently, "I didn't post it." But before Zhao Xinxin could breathe a sigh of relief, he continued, "I asked someone else to post it. After all, such a post is really not suitable to be sent out in my capacity. Miss Zhao should also understand, right?" She didn't understand. She wanted to go out and kill someone right now. Zhao Qinxin had contacted Cheng Yi purely to solve the problem at hand and to bring them closer together, but she had never imagined that she would get such a result. Instead of helping her, Cheng Yi even stabbed her in the heart. In an instant, Zhao Xinxin's heart was flooded with shock, anger, embarrassment, shame, and pain. Why should even Cheng Yi treat her like this? And how could he know that she didn't make the high-quality potion herself? Just when she was so furious that she almost cried out in anger, Cheng Yi's cool voice came over again. "Now does Miss Zhao know why I can't help you with that favor you just mentioned?" Zhao Qinxin was so angry that she was completely speechless. She inevitably felt a trace of guilt and panic, and she didn't even have the courage to ask how the other party knew about it. Just as Zhao Xinxin was struggling with whether to hang up or not, she heard Cheng Yi pause for a moment before continuing in a slower tone, "Because between Yan and I, it's always been me listening to him. There has never been any reason for him to listen to me." Zhao Qinxin was about to vomit blood at these words. She never imagined that Cheng Yi refused to help her, not because of the potion, but because of Yan. Yan was just an ordinary person with little power. How could he be any better than her? Zhao Qinxin's eyes turned red with anger as she gritted her teeth and choked out, "So Yan told you to do all this?" Cheng Yi let out a low laugh, his voice infinitely gentle. "No, I willingly did all of this for him. He should not know anything yet. The blood choking in Zhao Xinxin's throat was finally spat out smoothly. Chen Yi, how could you be such a person? You've let me down so much. She had loved Cheng Yi for so long, but she had never imagined that he was such a person. I've always been like this, it's just that Miss Zhao doesn't know me well enough. However, it's not too late to know now. At least the future Miss Zhao won't have any extra thoughts about someone like me, right? Cheng Yi said in a cool voice. As if he thought of something, he added a few words. By the way, I think Miss Zhao doesn't know this yet, right? The video from before was not recorded by Zhu Ming. I had someone follow him all the way and happened to record your meeting. But Zhu Ming was quite clever. I had someone send this video to him and he published it first, which saved me a lot of trouble. Zhao Qinxin only felt the blackness in front of her eyes after the waves of blows. She opened her mouth several times but was surprisingly unable to spit out half a word. Why? Why should everyone deliberately work against her? An Yan is, as are other students, and now Cheng Yi. Zhao Xinxin was almost going mad at what had happened on this day. Remember, this is all my doing. If Miss Zhao feels displeased, I am always ready to accompany you at any time. But if Miss Zhao focuses her thoughts on someone she shouldn't, don't blame me for not showing mercy. Cheng Yi's low voice sounded like a voice from hell at that moment, causing an uncontrollable chill to run down Zhao Xinxin's back. Since what needs to be said has been said, then. Goodbye, Miss Zhao. Chapter 65. An Yan had a feeling that the students in his major had a strange attitude towards him recently. They seemed to want to be friends with him and had gotten close to him, but they also seemed to worry about something. They always weigh their words when talking to him. An Yan didn't have much experience interacting with humans before. The original owner also hadn't made many normal friends because of his personality. For a moment, he couldn't help but feel a bit confused. He had to ask Cheng Yang, is there something I did wrong that makes them behave like this? Cheng Yang scratched his face and said, with a strange expression, I guess they are like this because of the previous reporting incident. An Yan raised his eyebrows slightly, puzzled. Someone is slandering me behind my back. Shouldn't I have reported it? He carefully recalled. It is written in the school's admissions handbook that if you encounter such cases, you should report them to the academy directly. The academy would handle them fairly, so in this regard, he couldn't have done anything wrong, right? Of course you should have reported it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Cheng Yang first affirmed An Yan's approach, then helped to clarify the general mentality. It's just that no one has ever done this before, that's why people are not used to it. I think it should be fine after a while. Is that so? An Yan tilted his head. Cheng Yang thought for a moment, but eventually added more clearly, apart from not getting used to it, they might be worried about another problem. What problem? They might be worried that during their conversations with you, there may be some inappropriate comments that you might accidentally report. Cheng Yang stated his guess. There are some words that are indeed inappropriate if used between strangers, but are just good-natured flirting in front of friends and don't contain any malice. They are probably just worried that they will make you unhappy if they accidentally use the wrong words. Although Cheng Yang's words were euphemistic, An Yan understood, so they're worried that I'll report them as well. Fearing that An Yan would worry about this, Cheng Yang hurriedly added, this is also just my guess, it may not necessarily be right. An Yan smiled and said, it's normal for them to think this way. Just like you said, no one has reported this kind of situation to the academy before. But once someone starts doing this, maybe someone will take the opportunity to deliberately lead others to say something ambiguous and then report it, which is really quite bad. Cheng Yang nodded. It seems that there is indeed such a possibility. An Yan thought carefully for a moment, and his eyes lit up. I know what to do. In a situation like this, the most fortunate thing was actually the perfection of the rules. The main rules were made so perfectly that there were no loopholes to be found. So, even if someone had a crooked mind, it would be hard to find a point to exploit. Therefore, after An Yan directly approached the teacher responsible for the previous incident and explained the situation. After listening to An Yan's ideas and suggestions, the other side did not reply directly, but 3 days later, the college issued an announcement. In the announcement, the college first made a clear statement about the adverse effects of the previous incident. It also clearly pointed out the names of the students involved in this incident, as well as the specific punishments they had received. Zhao Qianxin's name was listed, as she was the source of the rumors and was therefore at the top of the list. She had received the most severe punishment. Underneath the results of this incident, the college issued a full list of rules for judging and dealing with such incidents, detailing which cases were considered defamatory and should be punished, and which cases were characterized as good-natured flirting and would not be included in the punishment, etc. After this announcement was made, many students who were worried about this put their minds at ease, and An Yan felt that the atmosphere around him had slowly receded from the strange feeling he had before. It had become more harmonious and friendly. In the past, An Yan would basically hang out with Cheng Yang on everything. But he would now also be invited by other students to go out for a walk, chat, play ball games, or have dinner with them. Of course, An Yan was happy about this. He didn't know anything about humans before and was curious but also scared. Now that he was having more contact with them, he realized that most of them were easy to get along with. Just like now, as soon as the bell rang for the end of class, some students gathered around. Have you heard? The college mecha competition is opening for registration next month, and it seems that some potions majors are planning to participate. A student asked, but what does the mecha competition have to do with pharmacy majors? We don't know how to fly mecha. I heard from the seniors that in addition to the pure mecha battle, all the other parts of the competition are open to teams of pharmacists. Another student said, so many mecha majors are asking pharmacy majors to participate in the competition together. Another student added, I also heard that it is not compulsory. It's also possible for mecha majors to participate in the competition alone, but in that case, they would have to prepare sufficient potions in advance. So it's more convenient to team up with pharmacy students so that they can replenish the potions they need at any time during the competition. But it's difficult to replenish potions at any time in the middle of a fierce competition. It's hard for a pharmacist to successfully make a potion if their mental state is not strong enough, right? I remember that the rules of the competition also say that if a mecha warrior is teamed up with a pharmacist, they can't prepare any potions in advance. And if a team is entered into the competition and ends up winning a prize, the prize money is to be split in half. But every year's competition is different from previous years, so who knows what specific rules and format we'll face then. It'll be hard to improvise if potions are prepared in advance. Yeah, and I remember that there will be extra points if the mecha warrior and the pharmacist work well enough together. Anyway, it's just a case of each having its own pros and cons, depending on their respective choices. But then again, even if pharmacy majors can participate in the competition, it doesn't really matter to us, does it? We've only just started school and we haven't even had much exposure to actual potion making. Not necessarily. If you are a student with good qualifications and experience, you might actually be invited by the mecha majors, just like. That student suddenly stopped and glanced over at An Yan. It was clear who the example he wanted to give was. However, the reason he stopped was not entirely because of An Yan. In fact, after the previous incident, the vast majority of students in the major now disliked Zhao Xianxin. After all, no one wanted to have a friend who could slander you behind your back at any time and anywhere. In light of this, everyone cooperated and stirred the conversation away. I so wish someone would invite me, but I don't know many people yet. I'm afraid no one would even think of me. Me too. Although I'm looking forward to participating in this competition, I still have to work on my self-improvement first. But I think we have a classmate who will definitely be invited. As soon as these words were said, everyone's eyes fell on An Yan, and someone asked curiously, An Yan, has someone invited you to participate in the college mecha competition? An Yan had just been listening carefully to the others and had checked the details of the mecha competition, so he shook his head, no one has invited me yet. The inquiring student reassured, don't worry. There is still some time before the registration starts. Maybe someone will invite you soon, and there might be more than one. Hearing this, Cheng Yang, who was sitting at the side, suddenly thought of something and peeked under the table to send a message to his elder brother. An Yan smiled and said, I don't know yet. I've never participated in any competitions before, maybe. Before he could finish his words, his light brain suddenly rang. He looked down and saw that it was Cheng Yi calling. Because everyone was gathered together, the other students also saw the name displayed on the light brain once it lit up. While everyone was envious, they all politely went back to their seats. The communication was connected, and before An Yen could speak, he heard Cheng Yi's low voice come through. "Is Yen Yen busy?" An Yen replied, "No, it's recess time and I have to wait for a while before class begins." Cheng Yi would often contact him, but mostly after school or before class. He had never called during recess before. Cheng Yi replied, "Well, I do have a very important matter I want to discuss with Yen Yen." An Yen immediately straightened his attitude and asked seriously, "What is it?" Cheng Yi went straight to the point and said, "Does Yen Yen know about the college mecha competition?" "I know, I've just looked up the relevant information." An Yen nodded. If he could win the championship, he would not only get the highest graded signing rights from 5 famous mecha arenas at the same time, but he could also take away 1,000,000 star coins in prize money. Although An Yen was no longer short of money, he was still slightly attracted by the prize money. "I would like to invite Yen Yen to participate in this year's college mecha competition with me. Is that okay?" Cheng Yi asked in a solemn tone. And Yen Yen froze slightly. He really didn't expect Cheng Yi to invite him to participate in the competition together. After all, there was Cheng Yang. "Well," An Yen carefully glanced at Cheng Yang and deliberately lowered his tone, "Senior, shouldn't you invite Yang Yang to participate in the competition together?" Who knew Cheng Yang had him and exclaimed with extra disgust, "I don't want to participate in the competition with my big brother. He is so heartless. He will definitely abuse me to death. So it's better for you and my big brother to team up, Yen Yen." Originally, the other students could not hear Cheng Yi's voice through the call, but when Cheng Yang announced this, all the students in the classroom suddenly looked over in unison. An Yen. Chapter 66. Why don't we discuss it when we meet later in the evening? An Yen was having trouble continuing the conversation because he was being watched by so many people. In the next instant, everyone withdrew their eyes in sync. One of the students even gave An Yen a look that said, "You guys go on, we didn't hear anything." An Yen. Cheng Yi did not support An Yen's decision like he usually would. He paused for a moment and said, with a bit of grievance, "Is Yen Yen not willing to team up with me? Although I may not be able to win the championship, I am not weak in piloting mecha, so I hope Yen Yen will have confidence in me." An Yen quickly denied. "No, it's not that I'm unwilling to team up with you, it's just that." An Yen was cut off before he could finish his sentence. "So Yen Yen is willing to team up with me?" "Of course I." An Yen almost fell for it, but fortunately, his sanity stopped him in time. "Of course, I have to first think about it seriously." Cheng Yi didn't succeed in tricking An Yen, and he sighed with slight regret. His tone seemed even more aggrieved. "If Yen Yen really doesn't want to team up with me, it doesn't matter. In fact, it's okay not to participate in this competition." An Yen was a bit confused. What was the relationship between not teaming up and not participating in this competition? Cheng Yi sighed and continued pitifully, "I only want to team up with Yen Yen. If Yen Yen is not willing, then I will have to give up this competition." For some reason, An Yen's first reaction was to blush instead of feeling embarrassed. This reaction startled even him, and he hastily covered up, If Senior doesn't mind, then I'll team up with you." "So Yen Yen is promising me?" Cheng Yi's voice, which was still full of grievances one moment, became light to the next. He even brought up a faint smile. An Yen did not dare think about what was wrong with his state. He just nodded his head repeatedly and said, Having gotten what he wanted, Cheng Yi softened his voice and said, "Thank you, Yen Yen, for being willing to team up with me. You can take your classes normally and we'll discuss the competition in detail when we have dinner tonight." "Eh? But didn't we just have dinner together last night?" An Yen thought back carefully. It seemed that not only last night, but the night before and the night before that, he had eaten with Cheng Yi. Cheng Yi, however, did not think so. "We are discussing business this time, so we should of course have dinner together. But I already made plans with other classmates to have dinner together in the evening," An Yen hesitantly said. Cheng Yi, on the other hand, said without hesitation, "I don't mind having dinner with your classmates, and I don't think they would mind either, right?" Cheng Yi was already jealous more than once because the little one was getting closer and closer to his classmates. But in the face of the simple-minded little one, he wouldn't understand it even if he hinted. But he was also afraid of scaring the little one if he said it directly. So, in the end, he could only hold the jealousy in his heart and sulk alone. Cheng Yi thought about this jealousy for a long time and finally decided to take a jagged approach to it. He would start with the people around the little one, and let them know through his actions that he is the only one who can match the little one. This will save them from having any undesirable thoughts about the little one. And Yen hadn't thought of this possibility before, but since Cheng Yi had taken the initiative to ask, he couldn't say no directly. Then I'll first ask them if they're willing to eat with you. As soon as the words left his mouth, he saw the few people who had asked Yen to have dinner with him quickly turn around and say, in voices that could not hide their excitement, "We don't mind." Having dinner with Senior Cheng Yi was a beautiful thing that they couldn't even think about. How could they possibly mind now that the opportunity was right in front of them? They would be envied to death if the others knew that they had eaten with Senior Cheng Yi. Other students sitting nearby rushed over and said with special enthusiasm, "Yen, are you free tomorrow morning? Can we have breakfast together? It would be great if we could have breakfast together with Mr. Cheng Yi." "I'd like to have breakfast with you too. If not breakfast, then lunch is fine. If not for lunch, then dinner is fine too. If tomorrow doesn't work, the day after tomorrow is fine. If not, the day after next week is fine too. I can wait in line no matter what time it is." And Yen was taken aback by the enthusiasm of these people and stammered to Cheng Yi, who was laughing darkly over the communication, "Well, Senior, why don't we talk about it later?" Cheng Yi said with a low smile, "Okay, goodbye little one." Perhaps it was because Cheng Yi's voice was too magnetic, but Yen could feel his ears burning a bit. When he hung up, he was still thinking, why did the senior call him little one? Was it because he was a hamster spirit? But he soon didn't have the time to ponder this question. At this time, his surroundings were already full of students. Yen hesitantly asked, "You all really want to eat with Senior Cheng Yi?" The people around him nodded one after another, "Definitely. I guess there's no one in the college who doesn't want to eat with Senior Cheng Yi." As soon as the words left his mouth, he heard Cheng Yang say, "No, there are still people like that, such as me." Then he was completely squeezed out. "Cheng Yang, do you guys still remember that I am your Senior Cheng Yi's real brother?" The students no longer remembered such trivial things. All they knew now was that the students who had previously made a dinner date with Yen for the evening would soon be having dinner with Senior Cheng Yi. Although they hadn't been able to take advantage of this opportunity, there was still the next time and the next time after that. As long as they had a good relationship with Yen, they could always wait. Yen looked at Cheng Yang, who was squeezed out of the crowd, and inexplicably felt even weaker and more helpless than him. He subconsciously swallowed and said weakly, "This evening is purely a coincidence. If you really want to have dinner with Senior Cheng Yi, you can contact him directly." "But we can't contact him at all. I can't even get his contact number. It's forbidden to add friends and private messages to his virtual online account, and he hasn't posted anything for months, right?" "That's right. Senior Cheng Yi is so cool that he can't even be found on the school intranet." And Yen inexplicably felt that the Cheng Yi he knew was probably not the same Cheng Yi they were talking about. The Cheng Yi he knew was friendly, kind-hearted, and had helped him many times. The Cheng Yi these people were talking about was cold. There is no relationship between the two. But he concluded that these people may not have had any contact with Cheng Yi before, and their knowledge of him was only hearsay. "Let me tell you, Senior Cheng Yi is actually a very good person. He is very kind to people, he never puts on airs. He would even take the initiative to help people." There was silence all around by the time Yen finished his words. Everyone was staring at Yen with a serious expression, as if he had said something really outrageous. Yen was a little uncomfortable, and he blinked his eyes as he asked, What's wrong?" He didn't say anything strange just now. The nearest classmate spoke seriously, "Yen, I think you may have a misconception about Senior Cheng Yi." A classmate nodded in agreement, "I think so too. So we need to help you correct this cognitive error." "I'll start." A student dared to provoke Senior Cheng Yi earlier and was dragged to the arena and beaten up. Being beaten up is not the point. The point is that this one-sided abuse happened in the real arena. In other words, they were actually piloting mechas in a battle against each other. So here's the point. It is said that when this sparring match ended, the student who provoked him had a completely ruined mecha, the kind that can't even be repaired. Apart from this incident, there is another thing that is also widely circulated. It is said that last summer, a girl plucked up the courage to confess her love to Senior Cheng Yi and was directly rejected on the spot. The point is that after being rejected, the girl cried and slipped the gift she had prepared into Senior Cheng Yi's hand. Senior Cheng Yi threw the gift straight into the rubbish bin. At that time, this girl cried and asked Senior Cheng Yi why he did that, but he only said one thing back. "Since you've already given it to me, do I need to ask your opinion on what to do with it?" That's what Senior Cheng Yi said at the time. Apart from these two incidents, I know of an equally famous incident. And Yan's expression became increasingly subtle as he listened to everyone piecing together things that they all seemed go no. By the time the picture came out, his face was already serious. The students' expressions were equally serious. "So Yan, now you should know what kind of person Senior Cheng Yi is, right?" Cheng Yi, who had just entered the mecha and was completing an S-rank difficulty training session on the training ground, suddenly sneezed. An insectoid scraped on his mech arm, and his damage level instantly went from 0% to 0.1%. He pressed his nose. Could it be that the little one missed him? And Yen sighed heavily and corrected in an extra serious tone, "Although you have described so much, it does sound like it's true, but are all these things what you saw with your own eyes?" Everyone looked at each other and shook their heads in unison. Seeing this, An Yen seriously concluded, "So I think the one who has a wrong perception of Senior Cheng Yi is not me, but you guys." He realized that the person who had been suffering the most from the rumors was actually Senior Cheng Yi. When he thought that Cheng Yi had never mentioned this matter in front of him, let alone shown any displeasure, An Yen couldn't help but admire his open-mindedness. Senior was surrounded by so many rumors and was not affected at all. Seeing the obvious sympathy and admiration on An Yan's face, the students around him were puzzled. Chapter 67. If it weren't for the bell ringing at that time, An Yen would have wanted to carefully correct his classmates' misconception of Cheng Yi. How could he be the kind of person they thought he was? He was obviously gentle, thoughtful and helpful. But since the class was about to start, they had to let it go for now. After everyone had returned to their seats, Zhao Xinxin, who was sitting alone in the far corner, glanced at An Yen with a strong sense of resentment. Ever since Zhu Ming released the video, Zhao Xinxin's situation had gone downhill from being surrounded by everyone to being almost unnoticed. In addition, the way people looked at her had changed from envious and longing to contempt and disdain. Even if a few of her classmates were still willing to hang out with her, she knew in her heart that they were either looking at her background or her ability to make high-quality potions. In the final analysis, they were only willing to continue to befriend her because of their own interests. But in such a situation, Zhao Xinxin could not care less about these things. At least there was someone who was willing to be by her side so that she would not look too miserable. At that time, Zhao Xinxin thought that this must have been her lowest point. After all, it was the worst thing that had happened to her so far, but she soon realized that she had been too naive in her thinking. And with the revelation of the issue with the high-quality potion, even the last few people who had been willing to stay with her had turned away. They would at first cover it up, but gradually, like everyone else, they became more insulting, making Zhao Xinxin furious. The only daughter of the Zhao family, who had been highly sought after by everyone, had now become such a pathetic figure, forced to endure the strange stares of students from all majors. She even had to sit alone in the far corner of the class, wishing to hide herself completely. If that was all, even if Zhao Xinxin felt aggrieved and annoyed, she would at most lament that people were cold-hearted. But when she saw that the people who had been surrounding her before were now all around An Yen, she could not suppress the anger in her heart. It was An Yen again. Why did that guy have to go against her? And he was obviously just an ordinary person with nothing. Were these people's eyes blind? When she heard that Cheng Yi had actually taken the initiative to invite An Yen to team up and participate in the college mecha competition together, this anger finally burned to the highest point. What she had been longing for but couldn't get was easily obtained by that An Yen. If not for the last vestiges of sanity left in her mind, Zhao Xinxin might have pounced on An Yen and fought him to the death. But when she thought of her father's earlier reprimands, she reluctantly held back for the time being. But in her heart, she had already started to think of how to deal with Yen and Chengyi. Although she had indeed liked Chengyi for a long time, all her feelings for him had turned into resentment and anger after what happened. She would definitely let Chengyi know how stupid and wrong his choice was. She would let him know that she was 1,000 times 10,000 times better than that Yen. She would definitely make Chengyi regret it. She would definitely make these two people pay. Zhao Xinxin's mind was not focused on the course at all. She lowered her head and thought for a while before her eyes suddenly lit up. Yen was unaware of Zhao Xinxin's side of the commotion. After recess, he put his entire mind on the lesson until the bell rang again and a few of his buddies who had agreed to have dinner together gathered around him. "Let's go eat together then." It was just as well that he could take the opportunity of eating together to make everyone realize their misconceptions about Chengyi. When the group arrived at the canteen, Chengyi had already helped Yen buy his favorite food. Yan's eyes lit up as he explained to his friends, "Senior Chengyi is really nice. Every time we eat, he comes over in advance and buys the meal for me, and it's all my favorite food." Chengyi's own brother, Yang lamented, "Yeah, he always buys food for you but never for me." The other classmates, why did these two sentences sound a bit strange? Before they could think clearly, they saw Senior Chengyi, who was sitting not far away, stand up and give them a gentle and doting smile. Yen, come over here. I've already bought the food for you. Today is the sweet and sour pork that you love." Cheng Yang shrugged his shoulders at the side and spat out in a small voice, "You guys saw that, right? My big brother only uses such an expression and tone of voice when facing Yen. Not even I have ever been treated like that." Before anyone could revel in the rare and wonderful smile, they were mercilessly pulled back to their senses by these words. So this smile was exclusive to Yen and not for them? On closer inspection, it seemed that this was indeed the case. From the moment they appeared, Senior Chengyi's eyes had always fallen on Yen. Not only did he not give them a single glance, not even his own brother received any look. They originally felt that they were quite pitiful, but in comparison to Cheng Yang, their hearts were instantly more balanced. Even Senior Chengyi's own brother was used to this kind of situation, so what else did they have to think about? However, for some reason, the strange feeling that had risen in their hearts just now seemed to have become even stronger. Yen was oblivious to this and smiled as he waved his hand at Chengyi, then said to the people around him, "You guys go get dinner and we eat together." The classmates gave Yen a complicated look and nodded as they went off to choose their favorite foods. Yen, on the other hand, happily sat down next to Chengyi. "Thank you, Senior." Chengyi naturally reached out and rubbed Yan's head, smiling dotingly, "Eat now." Yen nodded obediently and began to eat. He slowed down when the rest returned with their food, and he began to formulate what he was going to say. Therefore, he didn't notice that when his friends chose their seats, they deliberately avoided the seats next to him and Chengyi. In fact, it was not that they had taken the initiative to avoid it. After all, being able to sit with Senior Chengyi and have dinner together was something that they had never dared to think about before. But when one of them wanted to sit on the other side of Chengyi, he got an icy look and was scared into changing his seat, so they all changed their minds. The classmates, Senior Chengyi is really scary, cack. Seeing everyone sitting down, Yen swallowed the sweet and sour pork in his mouth and cleared his throat. He pretended to say to Chengyi, as if unintentionally, "Senior, can I ask you a few things?" Chengyi wiped the grease stains from the corner of Yan's mouth and said softly, "Please ask. I will definitely answer truthfully." The classmates around them saw his actions and stared in amazement. How could Senior Chengyi be so gentle and considerate? This was too unscientific. Yen still knew nothing about this. He spoke deliberately. "I once overheard someone talking about you before, saying that a girl in the college confessed her love to you and gave you a gift, but you just threw the gift she gave you into the trash. This must not be." Although his buddies told him of this incident, he would naturally not sell them out at this time. The little hamster also knows how to be flexible. "That is true," Chengyi directly admitted, without waiting for him to finish his sentence. Yen was immediately a little confused. "Huh? But Senior, why did you do that?" None of his other classmates expected Yen to ask this question to his face, but they were actually curious as well. They all pricked up their ears and waited for Cheng Yi's answer. "It's normal to like someone, it's everyone's freedom," Cheng Yi said in a slightly slow tone as he looked at An Yen intently, "but that doesn't mean that when you like someone, the other person should accept you. It's equally everyone's freedom to reject someone's liking." An Yen felt that this statement made sense. "It seems to be so. So I chose to reject her at that time, which in no way meant her any harm, but she said I was too cruel and forced the gift she had prepared on me," Cheng Yi continued to state, "but I had already rejected her, so how could I accept her gift? In my opinion, since I chose to reject her, I should reject her cleanly and leave no possibility of illusion to the other party. I had to throw away the gift she forced on me." After listening to this description, An Yen nodded seriously. "I don't think there's a problem with the way you handled it. What do you guys think?" When the other classmates heard this rumor before, they all felt that Senior Cheng Yi was too cold and heartless. He didn't give the girl who liked him any face. But after hearing Senior Cheng Yi's description, they also felt that there didn't seem to be anything wrong with his actions. It would be a scum thing to reject someone and then accept the other party's gift. Several people looked at each other and said in unison, "We also think there's nothing wrong with this way of handling things." An Yen nodded in satisfaction and asked Cheng Yi again, "Senior, I also heard about another incident. They say that a fellow student in the same major ended up with his entire mecha scrapped up because he provoked you. Is there such a thing?" "I think so." Cheng Yi thought back carefully and described it in detail, "but I remember that he was not provoking me, but the whole Cheng family. He thought that the Cheng family's mecha manufacturing was not worthy of its name and that there was a big problem with its quality. So I challenged him." An Yen said, "So that man said something outrageous? I didn't even know about that." The other classmates were also surprised. The rumors really didn't mention this. That is normal. After all, only he and I were present when this incident happened at that time. Cheng Yi smiled lightly and said without much concern, "I also never mentioned it in front of anyone again. If it wasn't for Yen asking me, I wouldn't have known that so many people already knew about it." Cheng Yi's description of the incident was true, though the last sentence was a lie. Although he had never mentioned the incident to anyone, he could still hear those rumors about him. It's just that he had never cared about them before and had never defended himself. If he hadn't been worried that the little one might have misunderstood him, he wouldn't have said so much. After all, he had never cared about what other people thought of him. After hearing his explanation, the classmates felt guilty. They had only listened to one side of the story and had jumped to a conclusion about Senior Cheng Yi, which was really wrong. Maybe Senior Cheng Yi really was as nice as An Yen had said, kind and taking the initiative to help others. One of An Yan's classmates couldn't help but say guiltily, "Senior Cheng Yi, I shouldn't have believed those rumors so easily before and therefore misunderstood you. I'm really sorry." Cheng Yi glanced at this person and said with a detached expression, "You don't need to apologize to me. I have never cared about what you guys think. I said all this today entirely for Yen. I don't want him to misunderstand me, that's all. If he really cared about what the outside world thought of him and their opinions, he would have acted long ago. Although he wouldn't follow the rules like the little one and protect himself in a reasonable way, he didn't lack the means to deal with these rumors either." The classmates, they really thought too much. Senior Cheng Yi is really cold and ruthless. Their perception of Senior Cheng Yi is not wrong at all. However, how come Senior Cheng Yi's words seem to imply some kind of deeper meaning? So is it really what they think it means? An Yen didn't grasp the key point. He looked at Cheng Yi and said with great disapproval, "You shouldn't say that, Senior. Those people deliberately spread some unfavorable comments against you, which is wrong in itself. Even if you don't care about other people's opinions, you shouldn't let such comments continue to spread." Cheng Yi, who had an indifferent face a moment before, instantly changed into a gentle smile when he turned his head to look at An Yen. "Well, Yen is right." The classmates, their suspicions were correct. Chapter 68. It was a very enjoyable dinner for An Yen. He had eaten his favorite meal and corrected his friend's views of Cheng Yi. It could be said that he had gained a lot. But the situation was completely different for the others. They thought that having dinner with Senior Cheng Yi would be a joyous and brag-worthy event, but the meal turned out to be a very complicated one. They never thought that Senior Cheng Yi would be such a person. When facing other people, he was always cold and indifferent. He wouldn't even bother to explain, even when he was misunderstood. But when it came to An Yen, Senior Cheng Yi seemed to be a completely different person. Not only did he come to the restaurant in advance to buy An Yan's favorite meal, but he also smiled at him, rubbed his hair, and helped him wipe away the oil stains at the corners of his mouth. In the past, they all thought Senior Cheng was too inhumane, that no one could get close to him or no one became his friend, but they now understand that he is not inhumane. He simply devotes all of his tenderness and consideration to one person. They watched Senior Cheng naturally help An Yen clean up the dishes and put them into the recycling cart and felt like crying with envy. When did such a high-quality male god become someone else's? Cheng Yang looked at the people's expressions from the side and felt a bit of glee in his heart. He was the only one who suffered whenever his big brother and An Yen were having fun. It was nice to know someone else could feel the pain. An Yen himself was still in a good mood, completely unaware of the inner drama of his friends. He took the opportunity to whisper to them while Cheng Yi was taking his plate. "Did you see that? I told you that there was a big misconception about Senior Cheng Yi. He is really nice." Everyone looked at An Yen with a numb face and tacitly replied in their hearts, "Wake up. You are the one who has the biggest misconception about Senior Cheng Yi." Everyone left separately now that they had finished their meal. Some were going to find a classroom to read and study, others were going to take a walk around the college, still others were going to go out and have some fun. An Yen turned to Cheng Yang after all their classmates had gone. "Yang, you should go back to the dormitory first. I have something I want to talk to Senior about, so I'll be going to his flat." Cheng Yang immediately stared curiously. This was the first time An Yen had taken the initiative to go to his elder brother's flat. Was there something going on between the two? "What's the matter?" Cheng Yang asked, as if he had no other intentions. An Yen paused for a moment and said vaguely, "It's about a study problem." Cheng Yang became even more curious. "What kind of questions do you need to ask him? We are in the same major. Why don't you?" He was tossed aside by his collar before he could finish the question. Yen and I have something to do. You can go back to the dorm by yourself." Thus, Cheng Yang was cruelly abandoned by his big brother and roommate. And Yen went straight to the point after arriving at Cheng Yi's flat. "Senior, I have an idea now, but I don't know if it's right." "Let's hear it out." Cheng Yi poured a cup of hot milk for An Yen and handed it to him. An Yen took the milk, his white fingers resting on the milk cup. They looked so pretty that Cheng Yi couldn't take his eyes off of them. "I think it's not a coincidence that the discarded potion before could make me change back to hamster form. There must be some kind of substance contained in the potion that played a necessary role," An Yen said in a serious tone. He was now able to change his form back and forth with ease, so he naturally had no need to take the potion again, but he did. Although the potion made using that method would no longer forcefully transform him into his hamster form like before, it would bring the need to transform. The feeling was subtle, like being thirsty and you can't help but want to drink water. The potion made him feel like he might be more comfortable and at ease if he switched to hamster form. It was precisely because of this experience that An Yen had this thought. He guessed that some substance in the potion played such a role, and the effect was not specific to only him. In other words, if other people took this kind of potion, they might also transform into animal forms like he did. Although An Yen was not sure of the possible effects of such a change, he was eager to understand more. Cheng Yi pondered for a moment before speaking in a deep voice. "This possibility can exist. So you want to seek proof of this?" "Not only do I want to get proof, I actually have another guess," An Yen described seriously. "I was always in human form when I first came here. During that time, I had never felt the aura contained in the air, and it was only after I reverted back to my hamster form that I regained the ability to absorb aura. So, I was wondering, if the humans here could also convert to animal form, would they be able to absorb spiritual energy like I do?" A flash of surprise came to Cheng Yi's eyes, but then thinking of the little one's simplicity and kindness, this surprise immediately turned into understanding. Cheng Yi asked in a soft voice, "If that is really possible, would you reveal your secret to the public?" "Huh?" An Yen hadn't thought about this. He couldn't help but be a little confused. The little one really hadn't thought about this. Cheng Yi's heart softened and he was about to speak when he heard An Yen hesitantly speak. I think I can carry out this plan even if I don't reveal my secret, right? And Yen scratched his head, and said, I can say that I stumbled upon this after mistakenly taking a discarded potion I made. Wouldn't that work? Seeing Yan's distressed look, Cheng Yi's heart melted. He reached out and rubbed his hand in the little one's soft hair several times, sighing, how can you be so cute? And Yen looked at Cheng Yi in confusion. Weren't they discussing business? What did Senior suddenly mean by saying that? Before he could solve his doubts, Cheng Yi continued, then what are you going to do next? Can I help you? Here's what I'm thinking. I want to first make a high-quality potion that targets the animal characteristics on Senior's body, and Yen immediately retracted his thoughts and stated his intentions, but the uncertainty of this potion is too high, so I plan to try it on myself first to see if there are any problems. When I'm sure there are no problems, I'll ask for your help. Cheng Yi's body stiffened at the mention of his animal traits but then changed to a relaxed stance and he said, the characteristics I'm carrying are those of a white tiger, so how does Yen plan to make the corresponding potion? And Yen trembled when he heard the word white tiger, almost spilling the milk in his hand. Did I scare you? Cheng Yi asked apologetically. And Yen hurriedly shook his head, no, I overreacted. He really didn't think that Senior Cheng Yi was carrying the animal characteristics of a white tiger. It was simply too scary. The thought of Cheng Yi transforming into animal form. No, he shouldn't think about it any longer. It would really scare the hamster to tears. Cheng Yi was amused as he watched Yen looking scared but pretending not to care. He almost laughed outright. He paused for a moment and asked, if you want me as a target, shouldn't we start with the preferences of the white tiger? Yen nodded tearfully, but the white tiger is a carnivore, so should I directly add raw meat into the potion when making it? I feel so cruel even thinking about it. Cheng Yi suggested, you don't have to start with the food white tigers like. Maybe using something else that my white tiger loves? Yen asked seriously, then what do you love, Senior? If we could get rid of the option of raw meat, that would be great. Cheng Yi's gaze fell on Yen. He paused for a moment before speaking. Yen will use his own spiritual power to make the potion, right? Although he didn't know why Cheng Yi was suddenly asking this question, Yen still answered seriously, of course. Cheng Yi nodded, that's good. Yen then asked again, then what exactly does Senior love? Is it something that is not convenient to tell me? My love Cheng Yi's gaze darted around Yen's body before chuckling, my love is right in front of me Yen froze hard for a moment. His face quickly turned red and his heartbeat slowly accelerated. He subconsciously avoided Cheng Yi's gaze and stammered, Senior what? What does that mean? Cheng Yi said this on purpose. He wanted to know if the little one would be repulsed after hearing these words. He was afraid that Yen would not be able to accept it and would be scared away. He had to sigh, stand up, and walk over to Yen. He gently nodded at the milk cup in his hand, I like drinking milk very much. Yen suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, but for some reason, his heart somehow felt empty. It was very strange. He didn't think much about the reason for this emotion, he just tilted his head and smiled at Cheng Yi, so you like milk? Then I'll use it as a potion ingredient. Cheng Yi looked down at Yen. His gaze focused and locking him in. After a moment, he shook his head, no. Okay. I now know. Yen took several sips of milk, then stood up and said, I will make the potion as soon as possible. Cheng Yi took a step back and said, you and Yang live in the same dormitory. It will be inconvenient when making potions, right? For some reason, Yen did not dare to meet Cheng Yi's eyes. He lowered his head and said, it might be a bit difficult, but I will be very careful. Cheng Yi paused for a moment and then asked, if you don't mind, you can move in with me. Chapter 69. That's not right, is it? Yen glanced at Cheng Yi with some surprise, then he hesitantly refused. The first college offered a variety of accommodation options for students, from double dormitories suitable for friends, to cheaper multi-person dormitories, and fully equipped single flats. Students who choose to live in flats are not only from well-off families who can afford the high cost of accommodation but also prefer to be alone. This was especially true for students like Cheng Yi. He chose to live alone, despite the fact that his brother was also at the college. He would find it difficult to accept sharing with other people. but Cheng Yi was offering to move in with him. And Yan was not only surprised but also very grateful. However, he did not want to disturb the other party's normal life. So, he chose to refuse, despite how tempted he was. Cheng Yi sighed in his heart with disappointment. It's not that I want Yan to stay here all the time. When it's inconvenient at the dormitory, you can stay over. Afraid that Yan would reject him once again, Cheng Yi added, this flat has 2 bedrooms, so it won't affect me even if you live here. Although he wanted to directly develop their relationship into an intimate bed-sharing one, there were some things that had to be done step by step, otherwise the gains might not be worth the loss if he scared away his little hamster. And Yan was now more excited but also more puzzled. Why didn't Yang stay here if you have 2 bedrooms? Cheng Yi paused for a moment, then without any psychological pressure, he put the pot on his poor brother. He doesn't want to live with me. Considering how Cheng Yang had desperately spat out all the evil deeds of his big brother before, and Yan could understand his feelings, although he had never taken it seriously. Perhaps he was so close to his big brother that he did not want to live with him after entering the academy. So that's how it is. And Yan nodded in understanding. However, he was still a little hesitant in his heart. I really won't be disturbing Senior if I live here. You won't, Cheng Yi said affirmatively as he tossed out the next bait. In fact, if Yan is willing to live here, it would be doing me a favor. When I don't have classes, I occasionally prepare my own food, but since it's a meal for one, the variety of food is really too small. I'll be able to try a wider variety of dishes if you move in. And Yan's eyes lit up fiercely at that. As a foodie hamster, there was no way he could resist the temptation of food. Especially after tasting Cheng Yi's craftsmanship. He still couldn't help drooling when he thought back on it. Ah, really? The scales in Yan's heart had instantly tilted with the promise of the food. Cheng Yi slightly hooked his lips and nodded. He then said, with a bit of regret, of course it's true. And I've just recently learned several new dishes that taste pretty good, but I have no one to taste them. If Yan still chose to refuse after Cheng Yi's words had gone this far, then he would not be a qualified foodie hamster. And Yan said solemnly, in that case, I'll have to trouble you in the future. The curvature of Cheng Yi's lips immediately deepened. I'll also need more care from Yan in the future. The first step was to get Yan to agree to stay at his flat occasionally. Success. The next step was to make the little one slowly get used to his company and attention, with good food and meticulous care, and then the next step. A dark aura flashed under Cheng Yi's eyes, but he quickly hid it and spoke with a smile. Since Yan has agreed to occasionally stay here, why don't you stay here tonight? Ah? Does it need to be so quick? And Yan was still immersed in the temptation of the food and was a bit overwhelmed. Cheng Yi said, well, since you have already decided on a direction and an idea, we should naturally put it into practice. The sooner, the better. I happen to have a complete set of equipment in my flat, and most of the relevant ingredients are also available. And Yan was indeed eager to put his ideas into practice as soon as possible. In addition, he had already agreed with Cheng Yi that he would occasionally sleep over, so there was really nothing wrong with staying here tonight. With this in mind, Yan agreed, then I'll trouble Senior. Cheng Yi rubbed Yan's head and said, it's no trouble. I'm happy that Yan is willing to come over to keep me company. Yan said, with his head bowed, then I'll tell Yang. I don't want him to worry about me. Cheng Yi said, you can just go straight to making potions. Leave this little matter to me. With his brother's castle-building personality, there was no telling what strange reaction he would have if Yan told him he would be living here. Cheng Yang was, after all, Cheng Yi's own brother, so Yan did not insist much on this matter. He thanked him and ran off to research the transformation potion. Yan gave it this name because the purpose of the potion was to transform the human form. Cheng Yi had already sent a message to his brother when he began to work on his experiments. Cheng Yi, Yan is staying at my place tonight. Don't bother him. The first half of the sentence was an explanation of the main points of the matter, while the second half was to prevent his silly brother from having a brain fart and running off to disturb the little one. But this was not the case in Cheng Yang's opinion. In less than 10 seconds, Cheng Yang replied with a message, fuck. Big brother. You actually beeped Yan so quickly. It's simply horrible. Cheng Yi's face suddenly darkened, What kind of nonsense are you thinking about? Yan Yan is only staying with me temporarily. Cheng Yang once again replied in seconds. Do you think I am as easy to fool as a 3-year-old child? There is no way I can accept this explanation. You are too sinister and perverted. Yan Yan is obviously so innocent and kind. Why did he have to go through such a horrible thing? Promise me to be gentle and don't let Yan Yan feel too much pain, okay? Chen Yi. Wasn't he better off without this younger brother of his? Cheng Yi was too lazy to talk to his silly brother. He directly turned off his light brain and went to the study to find An Yan. This study was empty with only a bookshelf and a desk 2 days ago. But it had now become a fully equipped pharmacy room. At that moment, An Yan was carefully mixing and grinding the ingredients for the potion. He also added milk to the few essential ingredients. Once the ingredients were fully ground and blended, An Yan began to add his own spiritual energy to allow the two to fully integrate. Cheng Yi was standing not far away, quietly watching the little guy's serious face. His mood also settled, and his aura became soft and gentle. It wasn't long before the potion was successfully made, and An Yan noticed Cheng Yi standing not far behind him. He said with excitement, "Senior, I added milk to it and the process went quite smoothly, though I don't know what the test results will be like." He put the finished potion into the testing device as he said that. Cheng Yi took a few steps closer. The potions made by Yan Yan are the best. An Yan touched his nose a little sheepishly. The test results came out and he immediately took them out to take a look. It's still a discarded potion, and the side effects are the same as before. Cheng Yi said, "So the potion should be a success?" "I don't know yet. The test results are too vague. I'll try drinking it first." An was about to open the potion and drink it, but was stopped by Cheng Yi's hand. Cheng Yi said, "I'd better do it." "How can I allow you to do that? It's the first experiment, and we don't even know what the situation is yet." "Of course you can't." An Yan hurriedly shook his head. However, before he could finish his sentence, Cheng Yi had already taken the potion bottle before he could react and drank it down in one go. An Yan was startled and grabbed Cheng Yi's arm in a sharp retort. "How could you drink the potion? Quickly spit it out." If he had known that Cheng Yi would suddenly do such a thing, he should not have let him into the room. Cheng Yi, however, looked very calm. He was even in the mood to comment, "The taste is not bad. It does have the taste of milk." An Yan was on the verge of tears, but he was at her wit's end. He could only ask Cheng Yi anxiously, "How are you feeling now, senior? Are you feeling unwell? Do you feel if anything is wrong?" Cheng Yi felt carefully and shook his head, "Not yet." "When did the potion begin to work after drinking it?" "It seemed to take effect after a while, but my situation is different from yours," An Yan said, still anxious. "I'm a hamster spirit. Nothing would happen even if I drank some strange potion, but you." An Yan looked like he was about to cry, and Cheng Yi chuckled. He nudged him on the tip of his nose. "How can Yan Yan have so little confidence in himself? Any potion you make is certainly the best." An Yan was very anxious and sad, but his heart suddenly skipped twice when he heard these words. But he didn't have time to carefully think about that. His only thoughts were on how to solve the current problem. Just when his thoughts were in a panic and he didn't know what to do, he saw a white light suddenly glowing around Cheng Yi's body. Chapter 70. Before An Yan could react, the light suddenly became intense, and he reflexively used his arm to shield his eyes. Was the potion taking effect? Or had something gone wrong? An Yan was worried. He was enduring the blinding light to check the situation when something suddenly wrapped around his waist. He was startled and subconsciously reached over. His had touched a furry, warm tail. After touching this tail, An Yan's first reaction was, "So Senior's transformation was successful. That's great." Then he realized that this was a white tiger's tail. He immediately began trembling and shook his hands to pull away from the tail wrapped around his waist. However, he was so afraid that there was little strength in his hands, and he wasn't successful. On the contrary, Cheng Yi, who had now into the white tiger, could not help but let out a pleasant low growl from his throat. The little one was teasing him. Is he very fond of his animal form? With this in mind, the tiger's tail could not help wrapping the tail around the waist even tighter. His paws, where he had put away the sharp claws, went to Anyan's stomach before slowly moving to the two upturned buttocks and gently pressing them. They are really soft and fleshy. Anyan was already terrified by the white tiger tail, and now being felt up by Cheng Yi's made him almost cry out, You quickly let go of me. He now couldn't even associate this white tiger with Cheng Yi. His only thought was that he was being suppressed by a fierce white tiger. The whole person was shaking incessantly. Along with Anyan's trembling voice full of fear, the light on Cheng Yi's body had gradually faded away. He could now see clearly, and the first thing he saw was the little one's misty eyes. He looked as if he might cry out at any moment. Cheng Yi was startled and immediately released his tail and claws before taking 2 steps back. But for some reason, Anyan's pitiful look seems to have touched some hidden emotion deep inside him. He had a sudden urge to press Anyan underneath him and bully him until he cried. This thought made the dark tiger's eyes instantly become much deeper, as if they were looking at prey. Fortunately, Cheng Yi's sanity was still intact even after becoming a beast. Otherwise, he would have bullied the little one to tears on the spot. Anyan still couldn't come back to his senses even after being released. He shivered and retreated to a corner, not even daring to look that way. He was simply pitiful. Cheng Yi could not help but blame himself and feel distressed. He was so focused on getting close to Anyan but forgot that the little one was a hamster spirit. He is naturally afraid of him. I'm sorry, Yan. Cheng Yi blamed himself and opened his mouth to apologize. But because of his form, it sounded like 2 low growls in Anyan's ears. Anyan was even more startled. Probably because he was too scared, he suddenly changed back to hamster form, and then squeaked and ran to the corner. The small trembling body crouched tightly against the wall, and did not dare turn back. From Cheng Yi's angle, he could only see the little one's slightly cocked up buttocks. For a moment, he couldn't help feeling distressed and a bit embarrassed. He wanted to get closer to the little one to calm his frightened emotions, but was afraid that his proximity would make the little one even more fearful, and for a while, there was nothing he could do. He couldn't use his light brain and he did not know how to change back to human form. Could he only watch the little guy hiding in the corner shivering? Cheng Yi was feeling anxious when the light brain suddenly rang at this time. Although he couldn't use the tiger claw to open the light brain, it could still receive information and communicate with the outside world. At that time, he received a video call from his mother. Under the current circumstances, Cheng Yi should not accept any communications. After all, he was now a white tiger, so he could not communicate with his mother normally. But seeing the little one still cowering in the corner, Cheng Yi changed his mind with little hesitation. He first connected the video communication, and then instantly adjusted the camera to an angle of the corner. In this way, after the call was connected, Cheng Lin would only see Anyan, who was cowering in the corner. Cheng Lin called at this time because she had something to discuss with her eldest son. However, her attention was immediately diverted to the little hamster after seeing the image in the video. Isn't this Yan? Didn't you say that Yan followed his hamster mother away? How come he's back now? Cheng Lin was first shocked, then she noticed that the state of the little hamster wasn't right. Why is Yan shrinking in the corner looking scared? Are you bullying Yan? Cheng Yi, of course, had no way to give a response. He could only keep an eye on the little one, hoping that his mother's call would bring him the reassurance he needed. She was surprised and a little angry that she didn't get a response from her son, but she couldn't check the situation through the call at this time. Since Yan's condition looked really bad, she could only soften her tone and say, Yan, do you remember Mom? I haven't seen you for a few days. Do you miss me? In fact, Yan had slightly come back to his senses after the call was connected and he heard Cheng Lin's voice. It was just that he was really frightened and didn't know what to do for a while. Yan slowly put down the fear in his heart, slowly turning around to face the camera. The small hamster in the camera looks like a small ball. It looked very cute. But for some reason, the pair of dark bean eyes obviously contained tears. The eyes contained a lot of grievances. Even the small tip of his nose was wet. The little hamster looked very pitiful. Cheng Lin's heart almost melted. The tone of her voice became increasingly softer as she said, Don't cry, Yan. Mom is here. Is that guy, Cheng Yi, bullying you? Okay, tell me and I'll help you teach him a lesson. Cheng Yi, who was lying on the side with a tiger paw holding the light brain, also almost melted from Yan's cute hamster look. Although the little one was looking really pitiful, Cheng Yi couldn't help but sigh in admiration. His little one looked too tempting. Yan's emotions had now almost stabilized because of Cheng Lin's reassurance. He recalled the scene just now with embarrassment. Although it was normal for a hamster to be afraid of a white tiger, that white tiger was not a real white tiger. I was Cheng Yi, and Cheng Yi would certainly never hurt him. Yan felt really ashamed when he thought of how he had been so scared that he had turned into his hamster form and shrank into a corner. Because he was facing the video display, the corner of Yan's eyes happened to glance at the big white tiger not far away, which was looking at him with anxious eyes. He felt so embarrassed that he lifted his paws and covered his face. He hoped that Cheng Yi wouldn't hate him for what he had just done. Cheng Yi would obviously not hate him. Not only would he not hate, but he was now gushing with adoration. How can his little one be so cute? If it weren't for the fact that the video display with his mother was still going on, Cheng Yi might have been unable to control himself and pounced on him. Cheng Lin in the video was also relieved and smiled. Is Yan feeling shy? Squeak. Squeak. I'm not shy. Cheng Lin laughed out loud and was about to call her son out, but the communication was suddenly hung up at this time. Cheng Yi only connected the call to allow his mother to calm the little one. Now that his purpose had been achieved, he naturally had to hang up as soon as possible in order not to reveal anything. Cheng Lin, on the other hand, was confused and angry. She still wanted to see more of her little son. How could her eldest son be so heartless? But at least she now knew that Yan was still with Yi. She could simply gush over Yan again during the weekend. Chen Lin's mood became much better after thinking of this. However, she obviously forgot that she had taken the initiative to contact Cheng Yi earlier because she had something serious to say. Cheng Yi slowly stood up after hanging up. He wanted to approach the little one but was afraid of scaring him again. He could not help but have some hesitation. Yan naturally noticed Cheng Yi's hesitation and felt even more guilty. He used the potion to turn Cheng Yi into his current form, but then overreacted and made him find a way to calm him down. He really shouldn't have. Senior must be feeling very sad right now. The more Yan thought about it, the more remorseful and guilty he felt, and the remaining fear in his heart was dispelled. He took a deep breath, tried to gather courage, and walked towards Cheng Yi step by step. But even so, he would still pause several times and do several psychological constructions as he walked to Cheng Yi. And in this process, Cheng Yi was quietly standing in place, patiently waiting for the little one to get close. It was not until the little hamster finally stood in front of the big white tiger that Cheng Yi finally moved. Yan was startled, and the small hamster froze. But he did not run away again this time. He felt scared in his heart, but he didn't want to hurt Cheng Yi again. Cheng Yi slightly lowered his head and slowly approached the small hamster. He could feel the little one's body stiffen and the fear hidden deep in his eyes, but he did not stop his movements until the tip of his nose gently touched the tip of the little one's tiny nose. A tiger and a mouse's breath slowly mingled together. At that moment, it was as if time had stopped, and Yan could clearly hear his heartbeat. He was suddenly no longer afraid, and he even took the initiative to gently rub against Cheng Yi's tiger face. Cheng Yi was very satisfied with the little one's closeness. His nose sprayed a stream of hot air, blowing onto the little one's fluffy face. Yan wanted to hide, but Cheng Yi lifted him with a tiger claw and gently threw him onto his back. Cheng Yi's back was wide, big, and warm, and he enjoyed this feeling after getting rid of his fear. He quietly lay on Cheng Yi's back, feeling his body heat, and was inexplicably at ease. But soon, he was not at ease. He still had to find a way to help Cheng Yi return to human form.